Have you ever stopped to think about who the false prophet described in the book of Revelation really is? Why is this figure so crucial in the final revelations, and what does he represent for those who seek the truth? This dark and mysterious figure aims to deceive the masses and lead humanity down a treacherous path. But who is he, after all? And how can we recognize his influence today, in a world where truth and lies seem to blend so easily? Let's explore every detail of this prophecy and discover its meaning for our time. The figure of the false prophet appears in Revelation, the last book of the Bible, in a scenario of great spiritual and material conflicts where opposing forces prepare for the final confrontation. In this context, the false prophet is mentioned alongside the beast and the dragon, forming a sort of unholy trinity that opposes God's purposes. This context highlights that he does not act alone but in alliance with other forces that seek to divert and control humanity. From the very first verses in which he is mentioned, the false prophet emerges as a manipulative character capable of exploiting people's desires and even their most intimate beliefs. He appears in a world about to face great tribulations, where he exercises the unique ability to fascinate and convince even those who strive to remain vigilant. This character stands out because he presents himself as someone who speaks on behalf of something greater but actually works towards destruction. The biblical narrative emphasizes that he thrives amid chaos, uncertainty, and people's vulnerability. Imagine a scenario where humanity, weary of wars and conflicts, desperately seeks answers and peace. At that moment, the false prophet steps in with alluring promises, capturing the hearts and minds of many who, in their anguish, end up following his words without question. His presence is strategically positioned in a context of crisis, allowing him to exert overwhelming influence. Revelation suggests that he has a symbiotic relationship with the beast, that is, his power and role are directly tied to this figure. Together, they form an almost irresistible force organized for a common goal, to lead as many people as possible away from the truth. This deception does not come from a mere manipulator but from someone with an impressive ability to tap into the deepest human needs, offering answers that sound like salvation but are, in reality, carefully crafted traps. Thus, it becomes clear that the false prophet is not just an isolated figure but part of a larger system of corruption and deceit. His position in Revelation highlights a moment of preparation for the end, where specific characters play defined roles. With convincing language and supernatural abilities, he positions himself as the messenger of a new era, but his true intention is to subvert and dominate. And it is precisely by understanding the context in which he arises that we realize his influence is not limited to the end times, but can already be felt. The false prophet is described in Revelation with characteristics and actions that make his intention to deceive and manipulate clear. He is not a character of empty words, but someone who performs signs and wonders that, at first glance, seem miraculous and divine. The Bible describes him as having 2 horns like a lamb, but he speaks like a dragon, Revelation 13 verse 11. This image symbolizes his ability to disguise himself as something harmless and spiritual, while his words and actions reveal an opposite and deceitful nature. Among the most impressive actions attributed to the false prophet is performing signs that confuse and seduce the masses. He is described as someone capable of making fire come down from heaven, a reference reminiscent of the deeds of ancient prophets like Elijah. This detail is significant because it indicates his ability to pose as a divine figure, confusing people by imitating God's signs. Many are attracted by his supposed spiritual authority, believing he acts on behalf of good when, in fact, his goal is to establish a kingdom of falsehood and control. Furthermore, the false prophet has the power to give life to the image of the beast, making it speak and even demand worship from all. This act goes beyond a simple trick. It represents an ideological and spiritual imposition where individual freedom is exchanged for false security. Those who refuse to follow the false prophet's orders are threatened with death, revealing the oppressive and violent nature that permeates his actions. He uses worship as a means of control, manipulating the human desire for hope and redemption to achieve his own objectives. Another fundamental aspect is the ideological deception promoted by the false prophet, who introduces a system of values opposed to biblical truth. He constructs a narrative where worshiping the beast is seen as the only form of security and prosperity, convincing many to accept his authority without question. His ability to distort the truth and create an alternative reality makes him a master of deception. Through careful propaganda, he manages to convince the masses that the beast's path is the only one leading to peace, even if it requires them to renounce their own convictions. The false prophet not only deceives but leads people into a state of spiritual blindness. By establishing a system where worship of the beast becomes mandatory, he seals the fate of those who, by choosing to follow him, definitively stray from the truth. This spiritual control is even more dangerous because it involves people's most intimate aspects, their faith, hope, and search for a higher purpose. Thus, the false prophet reveals himself as an agent of destruction who uses what is most sacred to manipulate and destroy, creating a profound and lasting impact. In Revelation, the false prophet does not act alone. He is in deep alliance with the beast, and together they form a global power structure that directly challenges the divine order. This union between the false prophet and the beast symbolizes more than a partnership. It is a strategic alliance to manipulate, dominate, and establish a new order where control is absolute. Through this relationship, we see a world power system in which structures of authority and influence serve the purpose of deception, promoting a false sense of peace and security while consolidating dominance over the masses. The false prophet functions as the spokesperson for the beast, using persuasive abilities and an appearance of piety to attract those seeking spiritual guidance. He builds a bridge between spirituality and the power system represented by the beast, becoming essential for manipulating people. By presenting a figure that represents good, he disarms many people's defenses, facilitating the acceptance of ideologies imposed by the beast. This cooperative strategy shows how the false prophet uses the power of belief to sustain a system that, behind empty promises, hides a destructive purpose. The beast is described as a political and military figure, someone who holds authority over kingdoms and nations. In this context, the false prophet complements this authority, representing the religious element that legitimizes and validates the beast's actions. He acts as an intermediary between the beast and the population, introducing practices like mandatory worship and the implementation of a restrictive economic system symbolized by the mark of the beast. The mark, which limits who can buy and sell, exemplifies the power this alliance has over people's daily lives, conditioning choices and subjecting them to absolute control. The combination of the beast's military strength and the false prophet's spiritual influence creates a system of control that is both subtle and totalitarian. The false prophet uses rituals, symbols, and language that refer to the divine to justify the beast's actions, disguising intentions of domination under an appearance of peace and unity. This system is adept at capturing those who seek a safe and prosperous life, for the false prophet offers just that, but at a cost few immediately perceive. The union of these figures suggests that manipulation occurs not only through force but also by exploiting the deepest human desires. This alliance warns us of the danger of power systems that unite political and religious authority with the goal of domination. In times of crisis, people tend to blindly trust leaders who offer quick solutions, and the false prophet uses this weakness to his advantage. This is an alliance that does not rely solely on brute force but is, above all, a careful operation of psychological and spiritual influence and domination. The false prophet does not appear in Revelation without a specific purpose. He has a clear and well-defined objective: to divert people from the truth and ensure they submit to the beast's system. While the beast represents secular, military, and political power, the false prophet is the religious and spiritual face of this domination, attracting those who seek answers to life's uncertainties. His purpose is to channel human faith toward a false hope, offering promises that, in essence, are an invitation to spiritual slavery. One of the main objectives of the false prophet is to create an alternative to the worship of the true God, diverting adoration toward the beast. Throughout Revelation, he acts as a spiritual leader, someone who uses signs and wonders to validate the beast's authority and convince the masses that it is worthy of worship. This purpose is deceptively effective because it appeals to a deep human need, the desire to connect with something greater. But instead of guiding people to the truth, he traps them in a carefully constructed illusion. The false prophet also fulfills the purpose of establishing a system of total control. Under the pretext of ensuring security and prosperity, he promotes the mark of the beast, a seal that represents total submission to the system and limits individual freedom. Those who accept the mark become part of a system that dictates all areas of life, while those who resist are excluded and persecuted. In this way, the false prophet acts as a controller of souls, ensuring that those who follow him remain within a circle of dependence and obedience. Another purpose of the false prophet is to perpetuate a culture of fear and blind worship. He implants in people the idea that outside his leadership and the beast's system, there is no salvation or security. This narrative of fear is a pillar of his strategy because those who feel insecure tend to cling to any figure promising stability. With this, the false prophet keeps the population in a constant state of vulnerability, making them more susceptible to accepting his doctrines without question. The false prophet is not just a distant character in Revelation's narrative. He represents an archetype of leaders who arise throughout history, exploiting people's faith and spiritual needs for personal gain. This danger is real and current because many leaders use the appearance of holiness and mastery of words to manipulate, deceive, and divert those who follow them. The parallel with the false prophet is clear. Both use charisma, the promise of miracles, and even religious language to gain the masses' trust. Many of these modern leaders attract followers by promising quick solutions to complex problems, from financial prosperity to miraculous healings. They know that in times of crisis, people tend to seek answers more intensely, often setting aside discernment. Thus, these false prophets capture the attention of an audience eager for change, presenting themselves as infallible guides and holders of exclusive truth. This dynamic is almost always based on a promise of transformation that, in the end, proves to be a trap. These current leaders, like the false prophet, usually utilize symbols and rituals to create a sense of belonging and legitimacy. Using fiery speeches and theatrical gestures, they convince their followers that they are the only ones capable of bringing peace and prosperity. This rhetoric employs fear and insecurity to manipulate people's minds. Moreover, many of these leaders present themselves as protectors against external forces, pointing to invisible enemies and thereby strengthening their control over those seeking protection. The blind worship these false leaders demand is no different from what the false prophet in Revelation intends to impose. They create a system where questioning is discouraged and obedience is exalted, often suggesting that doubt is a sign of weakness or lack of faith. For many followers, failing to obey means losing access to a path of security, leading to a relationship of emotional and spiritual dependence. This control is so strong that even when evidence of falsehood arises, many prefer to continue believing, fearing spiritual abandonment. Observing the actions of the false prophet and current false leaders, it becomes clear that the impact goes beyond individual harm. They promote a culture of alienation and illusion that affects society as a whole, dividing families and communities, creating a cycle of spiritual abuse that perpetuates itself. The great danger is that these leaders not only divert individuals but also foster a mentality that rejects truth and critical reflection, replacing them with blind and dangerous devotion. Faced with such a persuasive and powerful figure as the false prophet, the inevitable question arises: how can we discern the truth and avoid falling under his influence? The answer lies in the practice of spiritual discernment, an essential skill for those who wish to remain faithful and avoid deception. Revelation suggests that despite his signs and wonders, the false prophet will not be able to deceive those who possess discernment and know the essence of truth. This quest for clarity is a path of constant vigilance, where truth must be valued above any promise of prosperity or power. One way to identify and protect oneself against the false prophet's influence is to deeply know biblical teachings. God's Word, throughout the Bible, guides us on the signs of false prophets, warning about their practices and manipulation tactics. By familiarizing ourselves with the Scriptures, we develop a clear perception of what is true and what is not, which helps avoid the seduction of discourses that distort or manipulate faith. In Matthew 7 verse 15, Jesus warns, "Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing but inwardly are ravenous wolves." Another important aspect to avoid the false prophet's influence is not being swayed by appearances and spectacle. Many false leaders use the power of miracles and signs to gain followers, but these signs are not always evidence of truth. Throughout the Bible, we see how true faith is based on trust, obedience, and love, not on an incessant search for visual proofs. Developing resistance to spectacle helps strengthen faith in something that does not depend on external demonstrations but on an internal and solid conviction. Discernment also requires a continuous and sincere connection with God, seeking guidance in moments of doubt and being receptive to the Holy Spirit. Often, what protects us is that silent voice warning us about something that seems right but has something wrong behind it. Prayer is a powerful tool to discern truth because it helps us step away from distractions and listen clearly. In Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6, we are advised, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight." Moreover, it's important to develop an attitude of healthy questioning, where we do not accept any teaching without careful analysis. Faith does not imply naivety, and the Bible encourages us to test the spirits to see whether they are from God, 1 John 4 verse 1. This critical sense protects us against discourses that, although attractive, are empty or manipulative. Questioning, examining, and seeking truth in all things is a sign of spiritual maturity that strengthens our ability to recognize what is genuine. Seeking a mature, questioning faith rooted in true values is essential for those who wish to remain steadfast. Truth will never be found in the superficiality of miracles and signs, but in the depth of an authentic relationship with God. Value healthy questioning and, above all, trust in the wisdom that comes from above. Thank you for watching the video. If this message brought you any reflection, please like, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications. These simple gestures help spread content that strengthens faith. Also, leave your comments and share your impressions. Each experience is unique and enriches our community.